Alrighty, so what we're doing now, we'll just wait until some people actually join us for the broadcast. Once I get any questions, I'll have a look. I'll have a look at answering those. In the meantime, though, what we're going to do is go through some of the model guidance that's available at the moment. So bear with me while I get this up on screen. Firstly, let's take a look at the Aus Cyclone Chasers Weather Centre. So we'll do this while I await your questions. So screen share the OCC Weather Centre. All right, so on your screens now is the Weather Centre, or it should be the Weather Centre. And I just want to make sure that that's appearing. We're just going to make sure that we don't get, no, it's the wrong thing being shared. All right. As I say, I'm only new to this myself. All right, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so let's take a look at the Aus Cyclone Chasers Weather Centre. Now, for those of you that don't know how to use this, we'll just go through it quickly. Basically, we've got the options down here that we're going to use, and what we want to do is we want to have a look at a loop here and an animation of the system itself. I don't want the radar there because it clutters the image, so I take the radar overlay off, and I want it at fairly fast speed, but not lightning fast speed. So what I do then is I hit play, and I'm going to have to wait until it loads. And this can be a fairly lengthy process, especially if it's loading up 6 hours worth of radar images. So you're looking at around about 36 radar images by the time it all loads up. Now, let's go in and let's have a look at the system over the last few hours. You can see a lot of convection up here around the Arafura Sea. As I said in the NT update, we are looking at the monsoon trough developing through this region probably tomorrow. Now we can see some fairly deep convection just developing here on the western edge in the last couple of updates. So that's only been in the last 30 or 40 minutes or so. So this is the beauty of this latest satellite imagery. We can really see these new cells developing as they happen. Now, if we want to just move into Port Hedland, I just want to have a closer look here at what's going on with the system. So I change my settings here and I go down to Port Hedland. And on that, I've got the cyclone overlay from before. Sometimes you'll get an old overlay, folks. If you get that, all you need to do is hit refresh or reload or shift F5 or control F5, depending on whatever system you're using, to be able to reload that. So you can see here the latest imagery just there. We've got these really deep convection that's just popped up in the last 20-30 minutes. So it'll be interesting to see what effect that has on the system. Now, a lot of the time, if we get this deep convection that pops up right next to the center of the system, it can quickly intensify the system. You can see there it was trying to develop a bit of an eye, but it didn't quite make it, or it made it for about 20 minutes, and then it got clouded over again. We'll just wait till that loads up. All right, I think it's getting close to loading up there. So you could see some very deep convection developing just before nightfall. And you can see it here. You can just make it out there. Look at that beautiful blooming convection there just before nightfall, and then just after nightfall now in the last hour, in fact, we've seen this really deep convection just on the western edge of the system. As I say, very interesting, very interested to see how that impacts the system in the coming few hours. All right, so here's our tropical cyclone. It doesn't look very good on radar at all. In fact, the actual radar signature is terrible for what it is. I mean, we're talking about a possible severe cyclone, but you can see here the radar imagery is just dreadful. Dreadful interpretation of that, and that's because the system is being sheared still. We're still seeing signs of easterly shear, pushing a lot of this rain and this heavy storm activity to the west of the circulation center. You can also see here across the coastline that we have seen some squall lines push through, and some general lighter rainfall further to the west towards Karratha to Onslow, but really not too much of note. We can see this squall line just about to hit Karratha now on the radar. Across Port Hedland so far, we haven't seen too much rainfall at all. And as I said in last night's video update and this morning's video update, we're probably not going to see too much rain around Port Hedland until the system crosses the coast. As the system crosses the coast, we'll see that rainfall increase. That is, of course, if the system doesn't continue moving further to the east. Let's overlay the latest Bureau of Meteorology cyclone tracking forecast, and you can see where it's expected to go. You can see it's very difficult to find the center here on radar. It's very difficult to find the center on satellite as well, but it appears to be near where the Bureau have plotted it, maybe just slightly a little further to the east. But as I say, it is difficult because it's being sheared away. The system is expected to move in a south-southeast direction. That might seem like a fairly large error margin. It's not. It's about 100-kilometer error margin there, or just slightly over 100-kilometer error margin. So we're pretty confident on the track forecast here. We're not expecting too many surprises in terms of a southwesterly motion to impact Port Hedland directly. So that's the latest, at least, on the radar and satellite animations. Now remember, this is all on your AUssie Cyclone Chasers Weather Centre, so you can check this out whenever you want as a subscriber. All right, what we want to do here is just go over to the WA weather page. And on the WA weather page, we want to have a look at what the rainfall estimates are for particular locations. You can see here that Port Hedland, between now and 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, looking at 33 millimeters. So you're not looking at anything overly heavy because the system has moved a lot further to the east. We're also looking at reasonable rainfall around Marble Bar, but once again, the rainfall totals probably not going to be too dramatic because the system's going to be moving very quickly once it makes landfall. For places like Broome, they've seen some rainfall today on that westerly flow. And if we take a look at what Broome's expecting, you're expecting to see some rainfall for the next 7 days or so, although not overly significant once again. Karratha, probably some showers around tonight, and then by tomorrow, once the system has made landfall and started to move inland, things will dry out pretty quickly for you guys. So folks, that's in a nutshell what we're expecting. Once again, these rainfall tables are all in your WA page. All right, let's see if we've got any people watching on the let's see if we've got any people watching as subscribers and are asking any questions. All right. Okay, no, we've got no questions at the moment, so I'll just keep talking. And if you're watching this and you are a subscriber, feel free to ask a question. There we go. We have got a question. HJP asks, given a Pardew crossing, could we miss the gale force winds here in Hedland, being 150 kilometres west of there? It's a good question, HJP. And to answer it, let's have a look at what the computer models are showing us in terms of the wind structure for this system. So let's go to WonderMap, and let me just share WonderMap with you here in your own time there. All right. All right, so we're going to have a look at a couple of different models here and see what they're suggesting. It might just take a little bit of time to load, so just bear with me. As I say, with these live broadcasts, it is very difficult because I haven't pre-planned answers. I haven't really researched this, so some of the time you're looking at stuff the same time that I'm looking at stuff. So, and I try to interpret it as best as I can at the time. All right, so let's zoom in. We don't care about the cyclone itself. We care about what Port Hedlands are receiving here. That was the question. All right, so we're looking here at 8 p.m. tonight, so right around about now. Then as we go to 11 p.m. tonight, so we're looking here at 18 to 23 knots coming in from the south-southwest. And you can see Port Hedland there, and also South Hedland slightly less than that. As we move on to 2 a.m. in the morning, we can see once again 18 to 23 knots, fairly general throughout the Hedland area. As we go to 5 a.m. in the morning, those winds start to increase, and you can see the increase here, getting up to 23 to 28 knots. As we move on to 8 a.m. in the morning, conditions ease back slightly to 18 to 23 knots. And then once again increase at 23 to 28 knots as we go to 11 a.m. in the morning. Once we get to around about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, we start to see these more onshore winds coming through at 23 to 28 knots. And then they'll continue through to 5 p.m., 5 or 6 p.m. from the west-northwest before starting to ease off tomorrow evening. And you can see them here, west-northwesterlies. So there is a significant change in wind direction. But in terms of really strong winds, HJP, there doesn't appear to be any evidence of that at the moment on computer models. If we just take a look and see how that compares to the GFS, because these computer models do tend to disagree a lot of the time on the wind field. Now, I would trust the wind field from the Euro before I trust the wind field from the GFS, but let's have a look at the GFS and let's compare. So tonight we're looking at southerlies to south-southeasterlies at 23 to 28 knots. Let's take a look at what Port Hedland's currently receiving, and I'll just go to the Bureau of Meteorology website here and go to the observations for WA, and we'll see which models got it a little bit closer at the moment. So we're going to go to WA latest obs, and we're going to go to Port Hedland, Pilbara. There we go. All right, so what do we got? So we've got gusts of 19 knots, so 13 to 19 knots. So 13 knots is what we're looking at sustained. So already the GFS has overestimated the winds over your area. So we're looking at the GFS saying that you're supposed to be receiving 18 to 23 or 23 to 28 knots across Port Hedland at the moment. That's not the case at the moment. You can see here the latest weather observations suggesting you're only receiving 13 to 20 or 13 knots sustained. So already, as I say, we have an error there on the modeling. But let's continue on with it because it might come good. So 23 to 28 knots from the south. As we go to 2 a.m., we can see still 23 to 28 knots from the south-southwest. So you can see this gradual turning of the winds. As we go to 5 a.m. in the morning, we're looking at southwesterlies here at around about 18 to 23 knots, then west-southwest to westerlies at 8 a.m. in the morning at 23 to 28, westerlies at 23 to 28, west-northwesterlies at 23 to 28 at 2 p.m. And then by 5 p.m. we're still looking at those west-northwesterlies at 23 to 28 knots before they start to ease off by 8 p.m. tomorrow night. So at this stage, you would assume, looking at both of these computer models, that you're going to be just west of those gales. But have a look how close those gales are to your HJP. They're not too far away at all. So even a slight wobble to the west of the system. So at the moment, where the system is crossing, according to the computer guidance, is around that Pardew or just east of Pardew. So just a slight wobble to the west, even 10 or 20 Ks further to the west, and you're starting to get into that gale force area. So it is a very tight pressure gradient here. And so where we see those really intense winds, there's going to be really intense core, and then there's going to be bugger all outside of it. And you're in the bugger all bit at the moment. But as I say, if it does wobble westwards, then we could see you get maybe not into the core as such, but at least getting some gale force winds from it. Good question. Let's see if we've got any more on the chat room at the moment. Otherwise, if we don't, I'll go through rainfall. All right, on the chat room. Have you got any wind readings from Pardew Roadhouse? All right, let's have a look what we've got. I'm pretty sure the Bureau of Meteorology uses the Pardew station for theirs. So no, we wouldn't have anything from Pardew Roadhouse. And I'm not sure if they actually have an observation station there. I'm pretty sure they don't, in fact. And Pardew itself only reports once a day. And you can see here the last report was at 9 o'clock this morning. That does not mean they don't record. They record observations as per normal, but what they do is that they only report publicly once a day. So unfortunately we don't have a live recording there, and that's why, given the fact that had we known that this system was going to intensify like it was, we would have chased and probably would have gone to Pardew or Port Hedland. We would have had that option. All right, let's see if we've got any other questions. Oz Weather Watch, why such a slow start to the season? The real reason is El Nino. It really is. It's two words, El Nino. And if we just go to the BOM website, and I'll just put this up on your screen for you, so you can have a look at what I'm looking at. Just bear with me again. There we go. All right, and if we just go to El Nino. All right. No, that's not what I wanted. And that's not what I wanted either. Where are we? We need to go to the El Nino forecasts and the El Nino wrap-ups. So, the beauty of live broadcasting. All right. So currently we've got an El Nino. It's a very strong El Nino. The sea surface temperature anomaly here is plus 2.4. It's about as high as it's ever been in the history of El Ninos. So it really is a situation where we're not in a great situation to be getting any rainfall from tropical convection in the Pacific, because most of that is going to be located where the warmest ocean is going to be located, which at the moment is in the central Pacific. So until that starts to move west, that pool of warm water starts to progress westwards, or at least cool where it is at the moment, we're not going to see very much in terms of any late season effects of the monsoon and late season effects of the wet season either. So we really needed to break down. If we take a look at what the forecast here is in April, we can see that there is a breakdown of that El Nino pattern, but it's still above El Nino threshold. So it's still not back to neutral. So we're still in an El Nino even towards the end of the wet season. So that is a real problem for us for the remainder of the wet season. So I can't see us getting above average rainfall, at least for the rest of this wet season. But what we're hoping is that we'll get closer to average rainfall, and that's what February is looking like. So January looked really, really dry across all of northern Australia. February at least is starting to look a little bit more in the way of normal. So that's why we haven't seen that's why we've had such a slow start to the cyclone season. We've had no real convergence in the lower levels of the atmosphere. We haven't had a moist atmosphere, and our upper levels have been dreadful too. There's been consistent increases in wind shear, consistently higher than average 500 hectopascal winds. All of those things are a real issue. So that is why we've had such a slow start to the season. Boots 1981, can it get to a low Cat 4? It can, if it can maintain some time over water. At this stage, we don't expect it to remain over water long enough. It's going to accelerate, and if we take a look at how it's expected to accelerate here, we can see that the system makes landfall very, very shortly. So we're only talking 12 hours away at most. And while we are seeing that really, really intense convection at the moment, landfall here around about 2 a.m. in the morning on the GFS. If we take a look at the European, it's not much later than that on the Euro. In fact, it's around about the same time. So you can see here landfall at 2 a.m. in the morning. So really, it doesn't have much time to develop into a Cat 4. We will see, and I'm pretty confident on this, especially after looking at what we've seen here on the Weather Centre. We will see the system intensify in the next few hours. That's almost a given. But whether we can see it get to Cat 4, we would definitely have to wait. We would definitely need the system to remain over water for longer. All right. Doesn't seem to be too many questions tonight, folks. I think there's a few people in Port Hedland who were looking forward to a little bit of action that may not be seeing as much action anymore. Look, if I don't have any more questions, I will just quickly run through the rainfall and when you could see some rainfall. And then if I don't have any questions after that, I'll finish this broadcast up. All right. So let's have a look here at Let me share the rainfall. Oh, by the way, that was Trav. For those of you that don't know, that was Trav in the background there, spying on me, trying to see what the hell I'm doing. All right. So, do we have that? Yep. All right, so on your screens here is a 3-hour precipitation chart or 3-hour precipitation model guidance from the European. And once again, we use the Euro and we use the Access regional model, and I'll show you both of those shortly. So the Euro is suggesting that we should be seeing some rainfall around Port Hedland right now. And if we take a look at what our radar at AUsCycloneChasers.com.au was showing, let me find it. We've got to go back to the weather centre. And Port Hedland, 1 hour, and let's play it. So it's a little bit off, and if we take a look at what I'm looking at, say you can see what I'm looking at, it's a little bit off. So this is the current radar for Port Hedland, and you can see that most of that rainfall is located offshore with the system, and we've also got that feeder band with a squall line pushing through Karratha at the moment. So the model guidance is slightly off here in terms of where that rainfall should be located at this particular time. But let's move on regardless, because it's the best guidance we've got at the moment. We can see that we'll continue to have most of this rainfall offshore in the next couple of hours as the system remains offshore itself. As it makes landfall around about 2 a.m. in the morning, you see this pocket here of very, very heavy rainfall just to the west. Now remember, this particular cyclone is undergoing what we call easterly wind shear throughout its life cycle. So a lot of its strongest convection tries to develop near the middle and then gets pushed away to the west. And so just to the west of the system is where we're expecting to see that heaviest and strongest convection. Now, there's a fundamental key difference here between what it does in the next 6 to 12 hours to what it'll do in, say, 12 to 24 hours, because it'll change its structure once it crosses the coast and starts to move inland. Its structure changes, and so we start to see more rainfall to its east once it crosses the coast. So when it does cross the coast at 2 and 5 a.m., we can see some very heavy rainfall located here in the De Grey area. De Grey to Pardieu seems to be the heaviest of the rain. Once again, Port Hedland looking at just missing out on that heavy stuff, expecting to see light to moderate shower activity throughout the next 12 hours or so. As the system then tracks inland here, you can see that it's still for the first few hours of its inland trek, we can see most of the rainfall located just to the west of the low-level circulation center. But that's when it starts, around about lunchtime is when it starts to change structure, and you can start to see now the rainfall trailing directly through the center of the system. So as the system's tracking in this direction, the rainfall tracks with it. Now, as we go to 2 p.m., we'll start to see that change. We'll definitely see signs of that change. And you can see now that the rainfall located either on the track or just to the east of the track. And that's because that change in structure happens because of this trough system here. So what we're going to see is we're going to see an enhancement on its southeastern quadrant. So we're going to start to see southeast and northeastern quadrants, I should say. We're going to see rainfall there in more so the eastern semicircle than the western semicircle of the system. And that's the expectation as it pushes further and further to the southeast. Now, we're also going to see very similar effects to its winds. So if we take a look at its winds, when they decide to load up. All right, here we go. All right, so we've got the system crosses around Pardieu, as we know, and then we'll push towards the south-southeast through the interior of WA, and you can see that the strongest winds are going to lie to the east of the system centre. And that's exactly what we're seeing all the way through. And the possibility here that the Euro is toying with, that as the system interacts with the trough and starts to change structure completely, it might actually intensify a little. And so we could see some very strong winds here over the interior of WA as it does change that structure. Now, let's see if that is shared, or that view is shared from the GFS. I haven't looked at this, so you're looking at this just at the same time as I am. And yes, very similar view shared here from the GFS. You can see that all of that really strong wind located to the east of the circulation center. To the west is a very tight gradient here in terms of winds. So any more than about 20 or 30 kilometers away from the center to the west, and you're getting bugger all. But if you move east of that center, you've got some very intense winds continuing on with the system. Once again, the GFS likes to overkill. So you're not going to see 50 to 60 knots to the east of the system, not in the middle of the desert, but you will see the strongest winds to the east. And so it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility to be seeing winds at least gusting over 100 kilometers an hour well inland. All right, let's go to the chat room and let's see if there's anyone there that wants to ask a question. If not, we'll call it quits for the night. Riley Shoals got some good obs around 9:30 this morning. Wind gusts to 133 kilometres. Is there access to any models that shows real-time wind speeds in a cyclone? No, there's nothing that we've got access to. I'm not sure if the Bureau does, but Andy, there's nothing that we can access that tells us live real-time wind speeds in a cyclone, other than obviously the observations that the Bureau provides. On your weather centre, in the next month or so, we're actually going to be providing 10-minute obs for many locations in the tropics, and so you'll be able to get 10-minute observations as opposed to, or even faster updating observations if there's significant gusts. But at the moment, the best we can do is the Bureau of Meteorology website, and that updates every half an hour unless there's a significant change to the status quo. Right. Alrighty, that appears to be the only questions we've got for tonight, so it must be everyone's out, or the video has answered most of your questions. So folks, I'm not going to rabbit on, and I'm not going to drag this on any further. Thanks for watching. If you've got any, we've just got something there. No worries, Andy. Thanks for watching this one, folks, and as I say, we'll have another live subscriber update next time we need it. I don't think we'll have another one for Tropical Cyclone Stan. We'll have another subscriber video update in the morning, around about 6 to 6:30 in the morning WA time, and then we'll have a public video to finish this off tomorrow night for the general public. Thanks again, folks, for joining in this evening, and I'll talk to you again next time, next cyclone we get. See ya.